We are live. Well, we're live recording. Actually, what happened last night is I recorded with a friend of mine and it went live to YouTube.
Oh,
and I didn't even know it. But
that's funny. So you're doing like the
hopefully
retakes
that's
and
not
all that.
happening now, but I don't think it is. It doesn't look like it is. So
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, okay.
Well, if we start getting comments,
Scott Tompkins, Bigfoot Mapping Project. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Let's start with the Bigfoot stuff. As you say, I'm Scott Tompkins. I created the Bigfoot Mapping Project, and the Bigfoot Mapping Project is a crowdsourced repository for Bigfoot reports, sightings, audibles, evidence, etc., all to be submitted by the general public who's had any experience or found anything to do with Bigfoot into the map. So we can get into the map, further on in the episode, but essentially it's a map-centric, crowdsourced repository for people to access, explore, and submit any information that they have about Bigfoot. Now me, I'm from New York, so it's nice to be chatting with another New Yorker, like we were talking about in the green room. I'm from downstate I'm from Beacon, which is about an hour north of New York City in the Hudson Valley. And I grew up out in the woods, fishing, hunting, boating, camping, you name it. And went to college for GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems, which is the background I have to be making the maps and the applications that I create. And from there, I got into geophysical exploration, which is oil and gas exploration, seismic. Some people know it as seismic, and it's basically making a sonogram of the Earth. So you can see all the layers and geology beneath, and the formations and faults and everything that's beneath the surface of the Earth for basically drilling oil wells. And from there, during the exploration I was doing, I would talk to people about Bigfoot because I was out in the middle of nowhere in a lot of places. Right. And so they would tell me what was happening on their properties and their relatives' experiences, etc. And that gave me the idea to create the project. So my professional and educational experience and background has directly, unintentionally influenced the creation of the Bigfoot Mapping Project. Because had I not taken that route, I never would have had the background or the capabilities or the understanding or idea to capture all of this information in a semi-novice anthropological approach in the application and in the database. So that's a little bit about me. I think, more will come out throughout the episode, but that's in a nutshell who I am and why I created the project.
Yeah, and it's an amazing tool. I take a lot of notes, just so you know.
I'm here for it. I need to. Ever since I had a kid, I forget everything.
Right. So. No kidding. So what I was looking at is, So, and I'll ask the questions a little bit. But so, all right. So Bigfoot Mapping Project, obviously, I'm pretty sure what you're going to answer when I say, what was your entry into this whole world of, high strangeness that we kind of live in this community? What was your gateway drug?
Well, it was Bigfoot for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of a twofold answer. I touched on it earlier when I was introducing myself. But prior to that, I had an experience on Mount Beacon that was kind of unexplainable. I was hiking with a friend around the backside of the reservoir at the top of the mountain. There's a fire tower you can hike to, and you have to go around. One of the trails goes around the backside of the reservoir, and you can get to the fire tower and climb up, and you can see the New York City skyline from the top of the mountain. It's really cool. But as we were rounding the backside of the reservoir, there was basically it went up a small hill, and behind that hill was like a ridge that dropped down. And immediately behind that hill, we couldn't see, but there was something screaming, guttural, like a gorilla, tiger. I couldn't tell you what it was.
Wow.
And a really large tree started shaking violently all the way to the canopy. And this is something, no way a grown man that, The Rock couldn't have done it,
Yeah.
So we were 14, right? This is many years ago.
Get it.
We looked at each other and bolted down the mountain, right? And that was the first unexplainable, hair-raising, scary thing. What it was, I don't know, but we didn't have an easy explanation for it. So we've wondered, well, what was that? Was it Bigfoot? Was it somebody messing with us? We really don't know. So that got some curiosity, some adrenaline going, and I realized that there could be some stuff out there in the woods that we, don't know or haven't seen or is unexplained. Couple that with at the time, finding Bigfoot was really popular, right? And gaining popularity. So it was a natural influence on what I was interested in and the explanations I jumped to, right? Because of course it was all over pop culture. And it was like,
Yeah.
maybe that was Bigfoot. So fast forward, and I've kind of forgotten about it. I've gone on through college and work and stuff. And then, like I was saying earlier, that experience out in the field really contributed to my idea to create the database where I was hearing other people's stories about Bigfoot. And I was hearing them in West Virginia, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Texas, Louisiana, all over the place. So I started to realize that this wasn't just a localized phenomenon. It was happening everywhere. And that's where I got the idea to create the project. So like I was saying in the intro, my background, my professional career, and then it's one experience in my early years really contributed to my gateway drug. They got me into Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I tell, I talk to Renee occasionally, and I told her, I was like, I used to watch you on Finding Bigfoot, and I kind of not blame you, but you had a direct influence on, what I'm doing today through your show. And I don't think, how often do you get to say that to someone, right? So,
Yeah, that's really cool.
um, by the way, she's such a lovely person.
Awesome.
Lovely person.
It's
So
good to hear that stuff because sometimes, man,
she's amazing.
some of
Amazing.
those TV personalities are like,
No, I like her way more every time we talk. So,
yeah,
I'm really lucky to have her
yeah, that's super
in
cool.
my corner as supportive and giving advice and stuff. So I'm very grateful for
Yeah,
that. Very
because
grateful for that.
I see that you get some of the data from BFRO. Now,
That's
do
right.
you get it directly from them, or do you like download what they have publicly available?
So I started with a data set called Manjani's,
Okay.
and that website stopped. It just stopped being updated in 2016. It was a really good website. It's a very good precursor, essentially, to the Bigfoot Mapping Project. It's very
Yeah,
similar in a lot of ways to what I'm doing. And what that website did was aggregate a lot of Bigfoot databases into one map, essentially.
just a clearinghouse of data.
Yeah, exactly. So I got that data set, and in that data set, there's the BFRO, there's the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, there's a bunch of other different organizations' data all aggregated together.
That's
And I
awesome.
used that as a starting point to populate the map for the Bigfoot Mapping Project. And then along with that, I started crowdsourcing reports. So, yes, I do have to credit the BFRO and Manjani's and all of the other organizations that did a lot of work prior to me coming along with my
Yeah,
idea,
yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
integrating that into the map.
But
It
it's cool
really,
that they open that up to you too, right? Because sometimes you hear people protect theirs.
interestingly enough, you can actually, they have on the website, if you find the website, I don't know if it's still live, but when I found it, they have a download section. You could
See,
just
that's
download the
awesome.
whole database publicly, right? It's very, very useful.
So why the two maps?
Why the two maps? Well, the first one, the old map, if you
Which
want to
I
call it
like
that,
the classic map. I
the
like it.
classic.
Yeah.
So the classic map is just all the points on the map. And then this is actually probably a deeper answer than you expect to this question.
Yeah.
The classic map really just shows you points on a map. There's
The
no
actual.
right, the actual location, but the symbology with the actual points start to coalesce, and which can really make the map look busier in certain areas and give you the wrong idea about what's happening in an area because it's not those symbols are like a font size, right? They're not
Yeah.
actually true to, ground scale per se. So what I've done, especially when you zoom out, when you zoom in, like they'll disperse, right? The
Right.
closer you are to, 1-to-1 scale. But when you zoom out, things start to get crowded, right? And it can give you the wrong idea. And
Yeah.
there's tons of maps all over the internet that look like that, right? There's one Bigfoot map. Everybody's probably seen it. It's like a bunch of Bigfoot on a screenshot of like Google Earth, and
Yeah.
it looks like it's like Bigfoot's everywhere, but the symbols are huge, right? So they cover, half the state that they're in. And that's the problem with the classic map. It's a great map because you can really
Yeah.
see, all the points in an area. However, it can give you the wrong idea about what's happening, in general in a certain area. So with that in mind, I created the new map.
Which is awesome. I love it. I love
And
them
that,
both, but I use them both. That's the thing.
yeah, I mean, that's why I kept them up there, right? Because, some people prefer to work with the points all visible. And then the new map really does some analysis and displays that density analysis, a hotspot essentially in the map for you
Yeah.
so that,
Wow.
you
It's
can
just.
really see an analysis of all those points and how they relate to each other in certain areas. That gives you better information. So the reason that I have two maps is, there's different functionality in each map, but essentially I wanted the map to display what was really happening with Bigfoot, i.e. hotspots, rather than people trying to digest all those points in a map themselves because they're just not going to show you what people are what they think they're pulling from the map. It's not informing people correctly,
Yeah.
which is why I created the hotspot map.
Yeah. Which is really cool because it does kind of give you. Yeah. It just gives you. It's just awesome.
And there's all different ways to work, right? You might not care about the hotspots for what you're doing. You might just want to go and see all the points on a map.
Yeah. Right.
So I try to keep it open for people to work with things however they want to work with them, right?
Right. Now, what kind of data? All right. So this kind of leads right into one of the questions that I've got about the whole data collection of this. Now, obviously, a lot of this stuff is taken from other databases, right? And from people putting in their own recollection of a uh, encounter, right?
Sure.
For some reason, I couldn't. I mean, I've even got an encounter on here. I've got a few, but I only put in one just because I wanted
Okay.
to see what it was like. And,
Yeah,
and
no,
it's
that's
cool.
great.
It's smooth. It's everything's
Glad to hear
easy.
that.
I'm just wondering about data. Like, do you have a way of like crunching data? Meaning, like, how many sightings of like cinnamon Bigfoot do we have?
Oh,
Do you understand
absolutely.
what I mean?
Yes.
Or like foot size, or like, and like, how's that correlate to the map? Are you able to do that type of stuff?
Yes. So
Wow.
there's two parts to your answer or your question. Or there's two parts to the answer to your question.
Yes.
Um, First part is what makes crunching data easy is standardization, right? So that was the form that you went through and filled out and said,
Yeah.
that you had a good experience on. Those are the fields in the form. Did you see a male Bigfoot? Did you see female Bigfoot? How tall was it? What color did you see? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And then there's the additional comments, right? What didn't I capture in those standardized fields that was still relevant to the report? So, and there's like 5,000 characters you can add to 5 fields of 1,000 characters each. So crunching the standardized data is very simple, right? Because it's simple queries. It's basically, if, you know, find color in this list. So find brown, black, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah. But crunching, quote unquote, crunching the anecdotal text field portions of the reports is a little bit more difficult. However, I've started to use AI to really help with that because AI can read the whole database,
It's a
right? So
whole
it can
nother
read the whole
animal. So you could
database.
literally do a word search kind of
Yeah.
and done.
And there's all different kinds of LLMs out there,
Yeah.
large language models, so that you can really start to have your own environment, right? And train it yourself on your data. I haven't gotten that sophisticated yet, but I do use ChatGPT a lot, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and I've looked through that type of analysis on the database and found really interesting insights. And I think I've made a few posts that I'll share with you about how I use the
Okay.
AI
Yeah.
to look at the Bigfoot Mapping Project
Because
database. And
you could create your own. I say we, but you could create your own um, GPT to
mhm,
do whatever you want it to do.
yep,
In essence. So yeah, and I don't know why I never thought about it, but that's genius.
I've thought about plugging a GPT bot, making it available on the website so people can have conversations with Bigfoot GPT,
Yeah,
basically on
that's a great idea.
bigfootmap.com.
Very
And it would
cool.
basically pull all the answers from the database. So keep your eyes peeled for that. That's been on the back of my mind
Okay.
for a while, and it's really not that hard to do, to be
No,
honest. So
no.
it's very, very
It's
possible.
shockingly easy. Actually,
Yes, yes,
it's
it is.
actually terrifying. But anyway,
If you use it the right way and
exactly.
it's
Agreed.
constructive, it's
Agreed.
great.
Agreed.
But there is, now that you say it's shockingly easy, that's a very interesting point because AI can still give you the wrong answers,
Oh,
right?
it
It can
absolutely
be
can.
wrong. So,
Hmm.
and it can misinform you. It can make conclusions that really aren't there.
True story.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind.
That
Larger
you
audience
need a
out there that
disclaimer with
AI's.
that as well.
So I think I answered your question. I hope.
Yeah. No, no, you did. Absolutely.
Good, good.
Because, like I told you, I want to put you in touch with uh, a friend of mine who would like to ad nauseum talk about that data.
I'm here for
So,
it.
yeah, um, for sure. So, all right. So I'm looking here. We kind of talked about it earlier, but on your database, at least, what state has the most Bigfoot sightings now?
This is controversial.
I love controversy. I
I
love
no,
it.
I'm serious. Like people are gonna think I'm like making this up. I stand by these numbers
But
too.
you can look at it. You can look at it, and if you're looking at density, it's pretty intense. I mean,
It
it's
is.
intense in both. But anyway, I'll let you have the floor. It's your
No, no, no problem. So let me add this caveat before I answer this question. My count is only as good as the data that I've got. So there are reports that people have that have not been submitted anywhere that aren't in my database, in the Bigfoot Mapping Project database. So keep that in mind. I'm just telling you and sharing the numbers that I've got that I've received so far. Does that tell you that there's more Bigfoot in Washington than there's more in Florida or wherever, right? No, this just tells you the report. This is a snapshot of the reports today that I've got and the counts in various states. And the second part of that is that Bigfoot does not know political boundaries, right? So Bigfoot's not thinking, hey, I want to go live in Oregon. I heard it's great over there. Bigfoot
right.
doesn't know that where Oregon is, right? It just knows the ecoregion or the habitat that it's in at different times of the year and what's good for it and what it needs. So, with that said, here's the controversial thing, and I haven't said it on a podcast yet. Pennsylvania has the most Bigfoot sightings in the Bigfoot Mapping Project database. It is the state with the highest number of Bigfoot sightings and reports, I should say.
Yeah, that is controversial. But I mean, the data's the data too. But
Right.
like you said, and I like the caveat. At the end of the day, folks, don't get crazy. But per this
That's today,
for
right?
this tool in this database, that's where it's at. And I mean, if you look at the map, yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania and Ohio, it's bright. It's as bright as it is in Washington and Oregon.
It is. It is.
Actually, it's a
So
little brighter, like more dense. There's more density there.
yeah,
And I just can't believe how close it is to Pittsburgh.
right. It's kind of interesting, but that's an interesting point. And people always say, well, Bigfoot, we would see it. It it lives in far, remote places, and I'm sure it does. However, this does illustrate that this creature can be very successful in close proximity to human civilization.
Yeah,
How does it travel? When does it travel? Those are types of things we can learn from the reports. Where does it travel? I've
right.
done a big series on like corridors from Esri's Green Infrastructure data set. So these are things like we really need to think about. It's not like they're trying to walk down the sidewalk with us, right, in Pittsburgh, but
Right.
they they may be traveling through. Is that along a migration corridor, or is that what's on? What is the context, right? So just because there's a point on the map, that doesn't mean that Bigfoot there is there all the time. They're very transient. So what's really happening? This map is just the beginning of understanding Bigfoot. It doesn't have all the answers.
Yeah.
We need to start to analyze it to get those answers.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. So we do a bunch of research in New York and in Pennsylvania, and it's actually, from what I've heard from folks that have been doing Pennsylvania for a while, that there's also a market uptick in activity. Not
There
it,
is noticeably.
yeah, noticeably. So, which is also like, what's that all about? Like, and I don't know what data would tell us anything about that, but
That's a good
is it
question.
just
There's all
that more
kinds of
people
ways
are
to.
looking? I mean, there's all kinds of explanations, but it's just kind of a marked increase. And the other place that was shocking to me on the East Coast is Baltimore, like around Baltimore and like Maryland and
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of John Green's site reports there
yeah,
that occur in the state of Maryland. So
right,
it's very interesting there. There's some that don't have great lat longs from John Green's
right,
database.
okay,
So they are not spatially as accurate as somebody who maybe used the crowdsource
yeah,
report to put it on the map.
but that's a lot
So
of sightings, and
a very
Maryland's not
dense
that
area,
big,
but they are. I've combed through them. They are all in Maryland, for example, which is very interesting because it's not a large state, right?
right?
So I was going to say, if we can jump one back to your comment you made about why is there an uptick in Pennsylvania? I had a thought, and being the chatterbox I am, I can't not say it. But you asked the question, how do we figure out what that uptick is, right? And why is it happening? And that's where GIS can help. It really, there's so many different ways to slice what's happening and why creatures, wildlife are more visible around human establishments, right? So, one, human activity, right? Are we building new roads? Are we building new uh, like suburban developments? Are we leveling more forest, etc.? So there's less places for them to go. They're going to be more visible, right? Two, food scarcity. Is there some change in food sources there? Was there some kind of blight for a tree that they eat a lot of? Who knows, right? There's all kinds of ways and things to think about that affect all wildlife, not just Bigfoot. So, and then we can also look at what's happening with other wildlife in the area as well. So there's just so many things to think about outside of just why is Bigfoot doing this? What is encouraging Bigfoot to behave this way is another way to frame that question.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Or a different way for sure. Um, what are your thoughts? I mean, so do you do research other than this, obviously, but do you like go out and like
Yeah,
hunt? or hunt's not the right word. I don't like that. Um,
Search.
search or just,
I
you sit
do.
around a campfire and wait for something to show up or whatever your technique is. And
So I just talked about this. I have an episode of Mapping Bigfoot coming out this weekend, and I had a great guest on. His name is Austin Legg, and he's a big time hunter, and he's on the Fox TV show Extracted actually this season.
okay.
And he and I talk about uh, a lot of field techniques for looking for Bigfoot. And I like to hunt, if you can't tell behind me, right? So
Yeah.
my technique is probably different than people who don't enjoy hunting as much as I do. Now, I have had an experience on my deer lease here in Texas that I've talked about on other podcasts. I'll happily share it here.
Yeah.
I'll answer this question first, then maybe we can get into that. So my approach is concealment, stealth. I don't want anything to know I'm there if I can avoid that, right? I want to observe the natural flow of things, that as if I'm not influencing it at all. So I go to my deer lease where I hunt deer, but I also have seen Bigfoot, Sasquatch on that property. So in the off season, even during the season, not as much though during deer season because I've got a different objective then. But
Yeah.
in the off season, I am crawling through every nook and cranny of that property along the river. I found freshwater clams that are gigantic, like this big,
Wow.
that there's plenty of food there. There's tubers, there's clams, like I said, there's crawfish, there's a river running through it. So there's all kinds of frogs and fish and all
Yeah.
kinds of things to
The
eat
water,
for Bigfoot
that's
to exist out there.
always a good sign too. The water running through. So
Exactly, right? So with that said, I guess my approach would be more of a hunter approach. Not that I'm not out there to kill Bigfoot or anything like that. I'm
yeah.
there to find evidence, but I try to influence as little as possible, and I try not to disturb anything while I'm out there, right? I'm not doing tree knocks, I'm not doing howls, I'm not doing yells, anything like that, because that's just not my style, right? I'm not saying it's valid one way or the other, but it's just not how I can be effective personally. Now, why do I go out there and do that? I'll happily get into my Bigfoot encounter
Yeah,
if I can take the
absolutely.
mic and run with it.
For sure. Go.
I don't want to be that guy that just
No,
talks, talks,
get
talks, talks,
after it.
talks the whole episode. But
I gotta take this hat off.
okay, so that same lease that I was talking about earlier, that I'm out there looking for evidence on, finding all the food, etc. It was about, gosh, 2 years ago now, maybe three. I was actually finishing bow hunting and I was walking out. It was after shooting time, right? It's too dark to shoot anything. I just had my bow. And here in Texas, we have really large wild hogs, boars, and they can get
Yeah.
300 pounds, right? They're really big, ugly, nasty kind of creatures. They're gross. Um, so I was walking out and I saw behind, so I was, the barbed wire fence was on my left because I'd come out of the river bottom area where I hunt. And I was walking back to my truck and I looked off to my left at about 10, 11 o'clock. And there was a dark black blob right behind like a sagebrush, something like a sagebrush. I don't know exactly what it was. And I thought, all right, well, this is just a big hog. It's not coming my way. I don't want to disturb it. I can't outrun this thing where I am right now. It's a pasture one way, and there's barely any trees to climb up, right? There's nothing for me to get away from this hog. So it didn't see me. I didn't think. I'll just let it go on its way. I mean, and then I'll get back to my truck and go home. Well, it stood up. I stopped. From when I stopped, it stood up. I mean, this thing had to be 7.5 feet tall, and it was wide, right? It was wide, like a I don't know, just everything you hear.
Right.
Massive. I could see its hands like cupped by its sides, just like that, hanging down. I could see its massive arms and just the silhouette of them anyway. And then the silhouette of a head, like massive muscles here, no neck, and then like a pointy head. So this, ironically, this is after I started the Bigfoot Mapping Project too. So I'm like, nobody's gonna believe this.
Right.
But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
this is 100% like what happened. And so I'm standing there, and I can't believe what's happening. I don't understand what's happening fully because I'm more in of a reaction mode where I'm fight or flight. This could be a big person. I need to just figure out what to do. So so uh, man of many words. I said, "Whoa!" I mean, just like that, like whoa, like it caught me really off guard, and it squatted back down. So at this point, I knew we were interacting, right? And I still didn't know exactly how to handle the situation. I wasn't like freaked out. Like I was nervous, like in a precautionary way because this was potentially a dangerous situation, but I didn't feel threatened, I guess if that makes any sense. And I was like, I see you. Literally just like that. I said, I see you. And immediately after I said that, it stood up, turned around and sprinted through all the brambles and the prairie river bottom kind of wild foliage, and then it hit the thicket of timber that starts just at the edge of the field. Didn't slow down at all, and it's just you could hear sticks breaking and everything. And at that point, I was every hair on my neck, my arm, everything was stood up, and I was like, I gotta get back to my truck. So, like, I'm not even embarrassed to say this. I got back to my truck, I locked the doors, and I was like, what in the hell did I just see? And I was like, that's Bigfoot. That was Bigfoot. There's no, to give you an idea, there's this ranch that I hunt in Texas. It's 95% privately owned lands. It's not like New York or other states where there's public land to hunt. There's not a lot. So what you do is you get a deer lease, and usually it's from a rancher or somebody that owns the property. This ranch in particular that I was hunting is 11,000 acres, and I hunt a small portion of it by you know by like just very small. It's like 200 acres that I hunt compared to 11,000 acres. 200 is still a lot of land, but you know we're talking square miles here, and so there's no houses, and the lease is also bordered by a federal national wildlife refuge. So I know there's no humans within many square miles of where I'm sitting, right? I know there's a highway where it's obvious if people are stopped, and that's it. The rest is private. So when I leave, I'm like, all right, I'll look. There's a bridge where people would park. Maybe there's somebody there and they snuck onto the property and walked all the way down along the river, and they were sneaking and doing something they shouldn't have been doing. No car. And I paid attention the whole time while I was leaving to look for headlights or brake lights or anything that would indicate that it was a person that shouldn't have been there. Nothing like that. There was nothing parked alongside the road to indicate that anyone was there, and it's a wild place, right? So I am
Wow.
convinced that I saw a Sasquatch.
Well, unless it's Yao Ming wearing like a giant black parka, who else is it going to be that's that tall?
Well, it's funny you say that. Yao Ming does live in Houston, though,
Right.
or at
No,
least
I
he
know.
used to.
That's what I mean. Like
So
literally, who else is it going to be? You know what I mean?
there's there's no other simple explanation, right? That it wasn't like it was a game warden, which is possible, right? Because they do um, make sure people are following the laws, and they can come onto the property and observe you and things. And
But they're still
at
not that
that
big.
point, though, he would have identified himself and said,
Correct.
"I'm a game
Correct.
warden,"
You wouldn't
because
have
he
ran
knows.
away when you're
Yeah, he
like, I
wouldn't have
see
run.
you.
He would have turned on his flashlight and said, do you know what property you are on? Or do you have the
Yeah.
permission to be here? Do you have a letter from the landowner? Blah 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 blah.
Right.
Nothing like that happened. This was You know, when in cartoons it's like two adversaries meeting, like, what are you doing here? It was one of those moments. It's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
So I
So you
count
said you
myself.
didn't feel threatened.
No, I
Um,
still hunt out there. I
because I had
still
a, go ahead. Sorry.
no, no, no. No, I don't feel threatened out there. I enjoy going out there. I feel in fact, I feel like it's a very peaceful place. And I crawl through every corner of that place, and I'll sleep up against a tree. Um, is that smart? Because there's hogs out there? Probably not. But
Right.
most of the time, I'm armed, right? So I'm not terribly worried.
Right.
I'm also very careful. I'm not doing too many dumb things, right? But no, I feel very peaceful. I love it out there. I
But
think
I
it's a
mean, like when you were face to face with, or well, not face to face, but when you were in a proximity to it, you didn't feel threatened per se.
no, I was alarmed, but I
Yeah.
didn't
You're like,
feel
what
like
the
I was
hell?
going to be harmed. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I needed to prepare for anything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I
Like,
just got asked this question. That's why I was like, I don't really know how I would react. I mean, I've had encounters, but it's different. Like if all of a sudden I was like, 20 feet away from, how would I
so
be afraid? I don't
I
know.
was somewhere between 30 and 40 yards,
So
a hundred
not
feet, right?
yeah,
You know, which is a good distance.
it is, but
That's
it's not that far either.
no, it's not. But I can confidently say I didn't feel like scared or threatened. I felt a little confused because I didn't understand in the moment why a hog stood up. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Yeah. Because
So
people
that was the first thing
like your
that kind of,
brain like just like short circuits a little. You're like,
yeah,
wait.
no, for real. And so it stood up and I was just like, I don't, immediately went into like confusion more than anything
Yeah.
and surprise, I would say, but
Yeah.
didn't feel threatened. No.
Yeah. So like I'm convinced too that because it's such a not normal thing, right? That your brain compensates, kind of like it does when it fills gaps, right? When you're
Oh
like
yeah.
looking at things. So one of the things I'm finding in my research, and I'm wondering if you are finding the same thing, is just the like people. I don't know if it's like some of the class A stuff, like if it's trauma, that all of a sudden it's like parts of their brain are wiped almost. It's
I mean,
almost
that's
like
a very classic trauma reaction, right?
right. And so that's what I'm thinking it is trauma, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, wait, I forgot a crucial point." And then they tell you and you're like, "How the hell could you forget that?"
I mean, but
Yeah,
that's just normal with
right.
witnesses,
Right,
right?
right,
Like
right.
humans are notoriously unreliable witnesses, right?
Unreliable, correct.
If there was five other people with me in that moment, and we all saw the same event, you would get
Five
five
different
different
stories.
stories.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's probably a combination of trying to explain things and fill in the gaps. Then there is probably some trauma or something similar to trauma.
Something like, and I don't mean trauma is just the lack of vocabulary, I guess,
Yeah,
is
I
really what
understand.
what the heck is going
And then also, people just, if you're surprised and you're trying to understand what's happening,
on. Yeah.
in the moment you're not thinking, how tall is this? What are the details? You're not logging that in your mind. You're not, unless you're trained and
Yeah.
or at least not even trained, unless you've practiced, right? To be ready for that kind of stuff. It's nearly impossible to capture those details consistently in the moment, right? Because your body and your is reacting, right? You have a primal reaction um, to that kind of encounter, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a veteran. I've been in I guess you could say, like some sticky situations. And people are always like, well, why don't you get pictures, or why don't you have a picture, or why, whatever. And I was like, well, um, first off, the last thing on your mind is this.
Yeah, let me grab my yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to me, because I don't even, I carry it obviously, but I don't even carry it out anymore. I'm like, whenever I'm doing, because it doesn't, I don't know. I just, it's one of those things like, um, you must be asked this quite a bit though. It's like, what's the lack? Why is there such a lack of photograph and video evidence, of good video or photographic evidence? Because
Yeah, I do
people are
get
like,
asked that a
well,
lot.
we can take pictures of bears and, deer and all kinds of stuff out there. Um,
True, true.
what do you think?
So I'll start with cameras first. And I'll start there because I also, you can see behind me, I do a lot of wildlife photography,
Yeah,
right?
I see
So
that.
I, to get that orca behind me right here, it took, you know, bursts of thousands of, and that was one good photo. And I'm not a professional by any means,
Right.
this hobby, right? But a cell phone camera compared to the camera that I used to get that photo are two very, very different things. So I see a lot of this, and I have a lot of submissions that are blob squatchy simply because it was taken with a cell phone camera that was zoomed in from 100 yards, and that lens is not made for that. It,
Yeah.
it just simply is not the right tool to capture what you think you're capturing. It could be Bigfoot, but that picture is not going to be proof positive, right, with that cell phone camera. But the same thing could be said with like the tool, the camera I use. You have to be ready. You have to be experienced to use that correctly. And it really, I get all kinds of blurry photos still, right? So those photos that you see of bears and things, do you
And
know how
you're
many?
trying to take focus pictures and they're still blurry.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
exactly. So I think that the biggest one for me is really it's the cell phones. Yeah, everybody's got a cell phone. Why don't we have more pictures? Well, you know, try to go in your backyard, try to take a good picture of a cat that's walking around at 50 yards, take it steady and zoom in with your camera. It'll be a cat, but it'll be beyond blurry, right? And now
Yeah.
think about if it's Bigfoot hiding behind a tree and all you see is a little patch of
And
fur,
then you wonder
so
why you
it's
see all the pareidolia and
yeah.
in the red circle squatch.
It's
Right.
frustrating. It's very frustrating for me. Um, because I'm like, I want that, like, I want those things to be real, and I'm sure people that post things like that had those experiences. I don't want to
Right.
take that away from somebody like that
Correct.
because I wasn't there. However, that's not good evidence, and that's what the frustrating part is because it's being put out there and it's just not helping with the conclusions that people that aren't in the community draw. They're thinking like, oh, it's a bunch of people like you said that just circle stuff in photos, and then so it's very frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Um, the other thing about why haven't we captured Bigfoot on like a good image would be trail cameras, right? So we're talking cell phones, and then I always get trail camera questions, and trail cameras aren't perfect. They're hard to get set up right. They have to be triggered uh, consistently, and they're not consistent. You can
No.
have a deer walk in front of a trail camera 4 or 5 times, and you'll get one picture, right? The trigger
Yep.
is not always good. It's not a precision piece of equipment, and again, they're just trail cameras are only going to be placed where hunters or people who are using them want to walk to put them, right?
And
So
there are actually some decent film and pictures from trail cams. I
there
mean,
there are
they're not perfect, but at
no,
the end of the day, and some of them are very subjective,
they
but there
are,
are
yeah.
some decent, and you know as well as I do, being in the community, there's plenty of photos that people don't share,
I've seen some.
and so have
I've
I.
seen some where
And you're
it
like,
is facial
what?
features.
Yes. So, with that being said, I have, you brought him up earlier. I have a interview with Terry Wendell that I just published. Great dude. I don't know if you know Terry.
No, familiar name. Familiar name.
Gotcha. So he was talking about, and I had a friend do the same thing. Plus Scott Carpenter, you know that name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, legend, right? But Scott Carpenter had where he would put stuff way up in trees.
Right.
And people were like, so this guy had a trail cam up in a tree, about 12, 13 feet up, pointing down.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just made a TikTok because you produce shorts and then you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
post them. So I have one on TikTok, and one of my daughters does my TikTok stuff, right?
That's
And it's
cool.
got like almost 300,000 views,
Whew.
right?
I'm not on TikTok. Maybe I
But
should be.
but they're like, there's no picture. It didn't happen because he tells the story, right? About how it caught the side view of like what looks like a chimpanzee, but like only this much of it. But you can see like the detail, like hair, and it's just a very thing. But there's actually a couple videos or a couple photos like that you can find on the internet, but you have to dig for them. Can't find this one, but everyone's got their troll comments, right? If
Yeah.
there's no video or if there's no photo, it didn't happen, right? Well,
Right.
what I'm here to say, and you can back that up, is that there's plenty of people that don't want the notoriety. They don't want any of it. They and they don't want to be called crazy or being made fun of or, oh, that's fake. So
Right.
they either have trail cam footage, like there's a guy I have that I know that has trail cam footage, and he will not release it.
I mean, I understand that point of view,
Me
right? That,
too.
um, yeah. So that's a great point. That there's the unreliability of technology. There's the knowledge of how to use that technology correctly. There's the using the right piece of technology for the right situation. And then let's say you had the perfect storm, you did everything correct, and you did get that evidence. Then you're holding that photo in your hand and you're looking and you're like, people aren't going to believe me, especially now because
Oh yeah, because
people are
you
just going to
can
say it's
AI
AI.
anything.
Yeah. So they're like, that's AI. And you're like, short of having a Bigfoot specimen, live or dead, that's what we're going to have to produce, unfortunately, for people to believe Bigfoot is a living flesh and blood creature. But I completely understand the point. I've had conversations with people just like you, where just like you point out that they showed me the photo and I was like, the one I saw, the photo I saw, I can't really say who. They asked me not to share their name
Yeah,
or anything about them. But what I can say is the photo I saw, if everyone that is doesn't believe in Bigfoot or doesn't believe that Bigfoot is out there saw this photo, there would be a national craze for finding, not that there isn't already, but there would
right.
be no non-believers out there because this
Yeah,
photo is literally,
that
you can
good.
see its lips in the photo. It's If this is a real photo, which I do believe it is, just this person has not shared it. They don't intend on sharing it. And if they ever do, they're going to be, I doubt they'll share it. Let me put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
So this thing, when he showed me, I was just like, I was floored. So yeah, I get that. I get why people are hesitant to do that.
Especially if they're in the community because they know
Yeah.
what it will create.
Right.
And it's not something good, actually. I am a firm believer that I don't care if people believe because I do. I don't
Yeah.
care if
Same.
people, because the people that I want to believe that I want to believe, you know what I'm saying? I can't say it right. People that I want to believe that it's true already believe,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and we go have fun in the woods and, you know, try and film stuff and do all kinds of stuff. And I firm believer that they avoid cameras so very well. I mean, I actually use trail cams as a deterrent when
Huh?
when we're doing research trips.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have my tent and I'll set up. like, because I'm a military guy, overlapping fields of fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do that with trail cams
Yeah, it makes sense. You have no blind
and
spots.
driveway, the infrared driveway alerts,
Uh-huh.
and I haven't had an issue since.
It's funny that you mentioned infrared. Humans, I just read about this. Humans have the necessary proteins, or whatever you want to call them, alleles, proteins. I'm not a biologist. So we have whatever is necessary in our eyes, the structures to see infrared, but for some reason or another, just not activated, right? So if we have that, right, and to support that, I'll happily share the article I read because people are going to be like, this guy is
Yeah,
just
yeah, right.
conjecture, but this is a real article I read, and so which made me think the other day, if we have or could possibly have those structures that we need to see infrared, who's to say that Bigfoot doesn't
And that
have
they're
those
activated.
and they're functioning? And that's why it's like a beacon for Bigfoot is an infrared trail camera sensor, right? Because it's like daylight practically, right?
Yeah,
So, and I've thought that before, but after I didn't push it too much because it was just kind of a theory, a thought that I had. Then I read this article and I was like, maybe that's what's happening. So,
yeah. I'm pretty convinced that they can see in the infrared. That's just, and it might not be like like people think it's,
not like Predator.
yeah, no, or that it's literally like night vision. I
Right.
mean, because we know cats, have very good night vision,
Right.
and that's got to be some. If it doesn't have to be infrared, it can be infrared adjacent. There's like that
It's
spectrum.
a
Plus,
spectrum.
I mean, let's be honest, we only see this much
Right.
of the spectrum.
Right.
I know my audience hears me say this ad nauseum because it is. It's like we literally can see like I used to say like a seventh, and I don't know where I heard that, but it's even less than that actually. It's literally like 1%
I believe that.
of the electromagnetic spectrum, because that's what we're talking about,
Right.
the electromagnetic spectrum, and that encompasses light as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's radio waves, there's microwaves, there's gamma ray, all these things. That's all in that spectrum, and we
Right.
literally see like a thumb. It's
And
insane.
so I guess we wound around to that from
Yeah,
your question all the way to maybe Bigfoot could see infrared, but I think it's all kind of related when you're talking about cameras and trail cameras and things like that. And then they're smart, right? They know
yeah,
what a man-made object looks like.
right.
And if there's a big boxy trail camera strapped to a tree on a trail that they know like the back of their hand, they're going to notice it and they're going to
And
avoid it, right?
maybe even hear it.
Oh yeah, a lot of animals hear the shutter, right? Or
Yeah,
the absolutely. I mean, I have pictures of deer that are walking by, the shutter goes off, and they're this right in the
right.
camera,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
looking right at the camera. So,
yeah,
100%, 100%.
yeah. So there's who knows what's going on there. It's I mean, I'm kind of doing an experiment where we're going back, because the best piece of footage that exists is the Patterson Gimlin film, right?
Hmm.
And that is done with old school film,
Analog, yeah.
So I've been doing EVPs as well with tape,
Oh,
not
interesting.
not with digital.
Hmm.
um and I mean, sometimes tapes can have artifacts, but
Absolutely.
but I try to use this. It's hard to find though. Not
Yeah, I
used
work.
tapes, right?
Interestingly enough, a lot of the data that we transcribe in my day job is stored on tapes because you could store a ton of data on
Right,
tapes, right? But again, the tapes go bad, right? They only have a certain lifespan,
right.
and there's a lot of ways to store that media. No humidity is best. All those types of things that go along with keeping it in the best condition to
Right.
be used.
So I would love to have like older film. I'm not saying like the camcorder on your shoulder. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because it's still electronic, but it's a
Yeah.
different media. And who knows? I mean, I don't know what I don't know if you're, in what camp, or if you're in no camp, meaning flesh and bone.
I get asked that too, and I'm happy to talk about that.
Are
Yeah.
we in the Wooville?
Will.
I am all of it, frankly. I will not discount any of it, because everybody has their experiences, right?
Yep.
And who's to say too that we're talking about the same things?
We might not be, right? I don't
You
know.
never know, right?
I don't know.
You
And
just
I think
don't know.
I don't want to presume to know, but I'm happy to say what what my
Yeah,
thoughts
well,
are.
some people get dogmatic about it, but I don't think
Yeah.
you're one of those people. I just,
Not at all. Not at
but
all.
some people are. Some big names are, and you're like,
No, right, right.
what?
So I'm not, but I do have my own thoughts. But I keep those thoughts and my bias out of the data set first and foremost.
Perfect.
That doesn't mean, right? So if there's a paranormal leaning report, that stays in, right? And simply through the approach that we take on the analysis, like a big data analysis approach, we're going to find the overarching trend. So if there's only one report that's paranormal leaning outside in 14,000 reports, that's not
Yeah,
going to be a finding generally. It's probably going to fall out of the data set. Still may be correct, but it's not part of the meat, right? That's not the most
yeah.
occurring event in the data set. But okay, so that's one thing. I definitely keep my bias out of it. I don't, aside from spammers that are just trolls, putting stuff in there here and there, which doesn't happen too often, but it does.
Surprisingly, it doesn't happen that often.
No, it really doesn't. I got, it's kids more than anything. I just got
Yeah.
an email from a 5th grade teacher, and they were looking at the thing, and some kid put, he's really upset. He's like, I put a report in there. I thought it was being funny, and like he hand wrote an apology letter, and the teacher scanned it and sent it to me, and I was cracking up.
That's
Right.
great.
So, I thought it was really funny, but I don't get a lot of that, right? I think
Yeah,
people,
that's cool.
and when I do, it's obvious. It's very obvious, right? So those get called out. Aside from that, anything that's a valid report stays in. And then,
In
so
its
that's the database
entirety.
side of it. Now, my personal side of it, what do I think about Bigfoot? Um, Given my background, as you can see behind me, I'm very animal focused, right?
Right.
Have a conservation biology as a minor, so I'm not a true biologist. I'm more of a biology influenced GIS guy. Um, I think Bigfoot is probably more flesh and blood than paranormal. I'm happy to be wrong, right? This is
Yeah,
just
yeah,
my
right.
personal theory. So, there's reasons I think that, because of what I read in reports and their behaviors and where they are found, and the parallels I see to existing wildlife. Absolutely. But also, going back to my experience, Bigfoot didn't teleport or turn into an orb and float off when I saw it. It ran away. So
Yeah,
I'm also basing it on personal experience, backed up by things I read and things I know about nature, right? So I'm not saying I'm right, but that's just what I think. And I want to find out what's really going on. And that's a really big part of the project, right? So that
absolutely.
whatever I think, I'm smart enough and able and disciplined enough to keep my bias out of the analysis I do.
Right. Absolutely. Like, I know, like, I wear different hats. Like, I'm able to do that. Some people aren't for some reason, but I'm
Well,
able
some
to,
people
like,
have an agenda, right?
yeah, they do. But, like when I'm out in the woods, I'm looking for a flesh and blood animal, period. If other stuff happens, then it happens. But I am treating it as though it is wild, a wild animal, or
Right,
I don't
right,
have to say wild animal, but an animal, or
right.
human like
Sure.
entity, or whatever you want to
Whatever you
call
want to
it.
call it,
Right? Yeah,
hominid,
yeah, hominid.
animal. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, we're all animals,
I
right?
mean, at
So,
the end of the day, too, two of my biggest encounters shockingly sounded like apes. The sounds that were made sounded just like a freaking ape of some sort.
I believe that.
And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you can't take that, when you're talking about there's no apes in the woods in Pennsylvania. There just are.
No, but
There's
there are
not.
populations of monkeys in Florida.
They're right.
There
Correct.
are. I
Yeah.
learned that last year.
Which is crazy, but I understand. I understand why and where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
But lots of Bigfoot sightings or skunk ape, whatever you want to call Florida, what they are in Florida too. But that's like one of those big spots. If you look at your map, it's
It
all
is.
over the
It is.
place. You're like, holy crap. I mean, it's
Yeah.
in the more remote, in between the
In between the
cities.
coasts, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and
But,
down southwest part of Florida too.
but how many overall sightings do you have in the database? You said 14,000, but is that
That's
ish
ballpark. Yeah,
ballpark?
14,000 roughly and growing. The crowdsourcing portion of the map, so anything that's been submitted directly to the Bigfoot Mapping Project over the last few years, we have about just over 1,300 reports that we've received that are new to the community, right? That
Gotcha.
weren't in any other databases. They are
Wow, that's cool. How long?
1,300. So that's a good average
Over what cover
over
time?
3 years or
3
so.
years. That's awesome.
Well, I guess 4 years now, end of 2020, so roughly 4 years.
Yeah.
God, time flies.
Yeah,
But
it does.
um,
But that's impressive. That's
yeah,
cool.
if you do the math, it's a few hundred reports a year.
Yeah. I mean, so now this is one of my questions that I was mulling. Um, how big of a population do you think we're talking about in the United States, ish? And as a biologist that knows enough to be
Air
dangerous,
quotes.
that knows enough to be dangerous, right? What do we think, ish?
That's a good question. I would say, and I think I'm probably in line with Jeff Meldrum on this. If I had to guess in the lower 48, I would say 8 to 10,000 Bigfoot total
Gotcha.
scattered.
I think you're about right. I think that's the realm that I'm in as well.
And I mean, if you, it's that's a tough one. It's actually really tough because to estimate a population, you really have to understand behavior. And if these are as far ranging as people think they are the reports that are far apart along the timeline the same Bigfoot, right? It very well could be. It could be footprints from the same Bigfoot. It could be,
Yeah.
um, you know, howls, tree knocks, etc., from the same Bigfoot. So how do you know that, right? Without really studying a population like we would normally
Yeah,
study a
which has
population of.
happened though in certain spots. They've got prints that they can show that they're the same animal, like
Yes,
like
yes.
10, 12 years apart.
Right, exactly.
It's
So that's
neat.
exactly what I'm trying to point out. It's, you know, so let's say we found a footprint here from that same Bigfoot, and 10 years later we found another one that stayed over. How do we gauge that population? So that's very tough. But I think um, just just gut feeling based on number of reports averaging per year. One analysis I did that gives me an idea on this is it was kind of a interesting way of looking at it, I think, and maybe it was a bit abstract. But I looked at reports that occurred on the same day in the database, and I connected them with a straight line, and I measured how far apart they were, so I could determine, all right, that's if it's under a certain distance, could it be the same Bigfoot? Could they have traveled that distance in the same day? And if it's over a certain distance, it's obviously not the same Bigfoot, right? So that gives you an idea of individuals that were seen on the same day. And you do that through the whole database, over 14,000 sightings. That kind of gives you a good idea of individuals
Yeah.
simply because of the fact that something can't be in the same place or in the same vicinity within reason. Um, or if they're so far apart, there's no way Bigfoot traveled 500 miles in 6 hours,
No,
right? Something like
right.
that. So,
Unless it can turn into an orb.
well, that that
Right. You know
that
what I mean?
possibility
Yeah.
aside,
But yes,
yeah,
exactly. The flesh
yeah.
and
So that's
bone.
how I did look at it, and that's what really kind of pushed
Yeah.
me towards that number, extrapolating a bit. Oh, because you have to, right? There's no,
Yeah.
you have to. So I think we're right close to that, though,
Right.
probably.
Absolutely. Um, so what, all right. So I'm looking at your map too, and we've got, uh, what's going on with other countries? Do you have anything in the mix with those, with different, like, I see you have stuff in Canada, which makes sense, right?
Right.
Um, but like, what about other countries? Have you had talks? I mean, what would that even take? You know what I mean?
I mean, it's interesting that you've asked about that. I haven't had time to look through it and get it into the map, but I just received a database for Australia. I'm
Ooh,
working with the Cryptid Women's Society. They are very interested in helping with the Bigfoot Mapping Project and collaborating, and they're amazing.
that's insane. The
Very
Yowie,
enthusiastic,
right?
very
Isn't that
supportive.
what it is? The Yowie?
Yeah, and I've learned a whole bunch from them. We chatted for hours before Christmas, and we're I'm going to try and put something together for them so that they can capture more reports in their region, but it'll also supplement the Bigfoot Mapping Project database.
Gotcha. Because
So that's Australia.
I love that you have well, I'm assuming you put these in there about like the little snippets in certain parts of the, like Brazil, for example, you have, like an engraving found article by Christopher, like an article about something that's Bigfoot like, right?
Oh yeah, that's Kerry
Snippets.
Kilmurray did that.
Okay. That's
Um,
awesome. So
so yeah, if you hit the legend, wherever I got the data from, I credit them in the legend in the map.
yeah,
So
that's
you can
really
see
cool.
where the data
Screams
came from.
like down in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
it talks about either local newspapers or just cool. I think so. At least there's something, which is neat. So
Yeah, other countries are tough because I think Bigfoot is such a North American phenomenon as far as like
yeah,
pop culture and popularity. And there's a language barrier for like the website in general.
yeah,
Right, right.
right. And so
Um,
many, oh my gosh, just different regulations and
right, right. Although I do get a lot
firewalls
of
and
traffic
everything
from
else.
Russia on my
Okay,
analytics. Interestingly enough, I do.
that's that's pretty
Um,
awesome.
no, but I've had some sightings in Europe that have been reported. Australia for sure. There's one in India that's very interesting. South America is surprisingly blank, and I think I attribute some of that to a language barrier,
Yeah,
but I don't know what's going on there. I don't have good insight into why, maybe what's really why there's not Bigfoot reports, or at least why I'm not receiving them.
yeah. Hmm. I mean,
So
there is, legends of Bigfoot like creatures, but
there
actually they're
are.
more like, I almost feel like they're more like a ground sloth type thing than necessarily a Bigfoot. Um,
Right.
at least from what I've seen. You know.
I don't have a good knowledge base on that because I haven't read a lot aside from like what I can find on the internet. As far
Yeah.
as like, I don't have a database to refer to like I do for the
Right.
states, which is unfortunate. I hope it becomes more of a global repository.
Would be cool.
The infrastructure is there; it could
Yeah.
happen. It just needs to get some traction.
And I'm excited about this Australia thing though. That's pretty cool.
Me too. Keep your eyes peeled. That'll be coming out soon. I'll dump that into the map and get it symbolized, massaged, make sure it fits, and QC it, and then I'll publish that in
Absolutely.
both apps. So it'll be in the new map, in the classic map.
Amazing. Well, Scott, I could talk to you all night.
I just
I
I
just looked
told
at
you I'm a
I
talker.
just looked at the time and I've got to be cognizant of your time and my time. So
Yes.
I again again, we could probably talk for another hour at least. But with that being said, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. I hope I answered all your questions.
Oh, for sure. And some more. So I, you know, and of course I have more questions, but
well,
you know,
maybe
we
we'll
can
just have
save
to
it
do a
for
part
another
2.
day. Yeah, absolutely. So I want you to tell everyone where they can find you. What's the best, and also two more things, but we'll say, where can people find you?
Okay. People can find me. The best place to really get a hold of me and see anything that I'm publishing is Instagram. It's just at Bigfoot Mapping Project. The second place you could go to interact with the maps and actually get into the data is bigfootmap.com. And if you need to reach out directly and you don't have Instagram or anything like that, you can always reach me at scott@bigfootmap.com. That's a designated email I've got for anything you want to talk about, right? Reports, questions, sharing data, whatever it may be. Those are the ways to get a hold of me, and I'll do my best to get back to you in a reasonable amount of time. But we were talking before the episode. I have a young kid, and it's I'm quite busy with work, so just be patient. I will get back to you. I will always do my best.
Absolutely. So then the last thing, since the name of this podcast is Broadcasting Seeds, what sort of seed could you plant in my audience's mind to just get them getting down a rabbit hole? You know what I mean? Like something that you've been thinking about, or something with Bigfoot, whatever. But plant a seed in these folks' minds.
I will plant a seed. Oh, let's see. Go to bigfootmap.com and look at the classic map. We were talking about it earlier. All those points on a map. There's about 14,000 of them. And just peruse around the map and try and soak up just how many points there are. Scroll around, look where they are. And then as you're looking at it, in the context of Bigfoot, just think, if one of those points is Bigfoot, Bigfoot is real. Period. All it takes is one confirmed real report for Bigfoot to exist. So that's the seed. It's just one encounter.
Yeah. And you have 14,000 of them. So
odds are pretty high.
What's that called? What's the man, I wish I could remember, like the probability. I can't remember it, so never mind. Scott, it's a pleasure, and we will have to do it again for sure.
Absolutely. I had a great time. It went very quickly, honestly.
Yeah, it did.
Anytime I talk Bigfoot, it just, I know, anytime I start getting down those rabbit trails and I just get so into it that I don't even realize that the minutes are flying by. So
for sure.
I'm really happy that you invited me. I'm very grateful. I think this was a great conversation, and I can't wait to hear what your listeners think and the questions they come up with.
Awesome. So good. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe all my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they fill in the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are